Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Thursday, July 2nd, and the time now is 1:04. Running late. Notice for this budget hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Monday, June 22nd, and second notice was issued on June 30th, 2020. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 282-35 LS, the Fiscal Year 2021 Appropriation Act as requested by the Governor, relative to the Judiciary of Guam Fiscal Year 2021 budget request. Joining me for this budget hearing this afternoon, we have Senator Teresa Lai, the Oversight Chair of the Judiciary, and Senator Mary Torres. I know that a couple of my colleagues have called me and told me they'll be running late, but we will start as close to time as possible. The conduct of the budget hearing shall be as follows. Those testifying on behalf of the department or agency, which happens to be the Judiciary of Guam, will be recognized by the chair, and I've already invited the panel, and they are now seated. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized. Testimony shall be confined to the substance. We are now hearing about Budget 2021, and that's what we will focus on. We may go in a little bit to 2020, but we should be at the minimum. The individual will be allowed to present oral testimony. You are asked to remain in the room for questions or additional testimony as may be desired by the members of the committee. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for this proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or be escorted/removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel members from the Judiciary of Guam to rise and for our Sergeant at Arms to please swear them in. Thank you, Sergeant at Arms. I'd like to also recognize, additionally, Senator Sabina Perez and Senator Regine Biscoli that have joined us. I will now ask the panel to please state your name and your title, and please present the Judiciary of Guam's budget.
Yes, Senator. My name is Christina Baird, and I currently serve as the Administrator of the Courts for the Judiciary of Guam.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Diane Goodmalin, and I am the Finance Administrator from the Judiciary of Guam.
If I may, I would like to start our presentation.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Thank you. We are here today for the Judiciary of Guam's presentation that will serve to highlight the Judiciary of Guam's FY 2021 budget submission. The Judiciary's presentation will be presented through a series of slides and written statements. A hard copy of the slides and the statements have been provided to the committee members already. I would like to start our presentation first by reading the written statement of the head of our branch, Chief Justice F. Philip Carbolito. And if I may, I will start to read that statement now. Hafa-day, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing the Judiciary of Guam to present the Judiciary's FY 2021 budget submission. The Judiciary submitted in writing its detailed budget request for FY 2021 back on April 15, 2020. As we all know, much has changed on our island since that original submission. Less than a month ago, I delivered my State of the Judiciary address in this illustrious building, laying out the challenges that the judiciary faces from the COVID-19 pandemic. Those challenges continue, and as the judiciary adjusts to the ever-changing operational requirements, the need for a solid budget becomes more imperative. Originally, it was my intention that the judiciary's in-person budget presentation would proceed with the following lineup. I, as the head of the judiciary, would make this introduction. The clerk of court for the Superior Court of Guam, Ms. Danielle Rossetti, would present the hard data on the demands of the judiciary due to the COVID-19 impact. Presiding Judge Alberto Lamarino III would present a summary of that data and its impact on the Superior Court of Guam judges. The administrator of the courts, Christina Baird, and the finance administrator, Diane Goodmalden, would present the numbers reflected in the judiciary's FY2021 budget submission. Last, Justice Robert Torres would present the closing statement for the judiciary. As of 2 days ago, that in-person presentation plan had to be changed. Respecting the request of Senator San Agustin, the judiciary's in-person presentation will now be limited to the administrator of the courts and the finance administrator, who drew the short straws yesterday. I am grateful to Senator San Agustin for accepting this written introduction and the other written statements of our presentation committee. My introduction statement would be incomplete if I didn't highlight obvious points. The judiciary, the third branch of the island's government, must have sufficient appropriations to operate with. The budget presentation you are about to hear provides a synopsis of how the pandemic has created more costly operations than what is reflected in the judiciary's FY2021 budget submission. The budget presentation that you are about to hear presents a history of the judiciary's fiscal cuts to operations and the drastic measures the judiciary has undertaken over the past 3 fiscal years to meet its statutory mandates. The costs from the past 3 years are now affecting judiciary operations. Coupled with the operational requirements resulting from the pandemic, the judiciary needs sufficient funding to operate. The budget presentation you are about to hear lays out the most fiscally responsible budget for FY 2021. As I recognize in my State of the Judiciary address less than a month ago, this body has the difficult task of deliberating on and passing a budget bill. As I also stated a month ago, I recognize that our governmental coffers are meager and our island economy continues to suffer from the effects of COVID-19. As our budget presentation will demonstrate, we are not asking for an extraordinary increase in appropriations. We simply are requesting that you provide us with a budget that will allow the judiciary to meet its statutory mandates. Signed, F. Philip Carbolito, Chief Justice. So with that introduction said, I would direct the committee now to what is our first series of slides in our budget presentation. This first grouping of slides were prepared by the Clerk of Court, Ms. Danielle Rossetti, and the grouping of these slides is meant to illustrate the challenging situation that the Judiciary of Guam now faces as a result of the COVID-19. We start with the first slide. I believe you have those slides in front of you. What this slide demonstrates to this committee is the criminal cases that have been filed since the state of emergency was declared on the island. As you can see from this slide, the total number of cases that have been filed from March 17th to June 29th are 295 cases, almost 300 cases. The next slide is meant, we went a little ahead. The next slide is meant to present to this body what the criminal backlog is looking like for the Superior Court of Guam judges. Right now, as it stands, our grand jury presentations stand at 174. Our arraignments, based on the new case filings and the case filings that we had pre-COVID, are now at a total of 490 pending cases. Next slide, please. Our third slide shows from March 16th, when the judiciary went into its emergency hearing only situation, right now we have in our criminal case filings 429 cases that need to go to trial. Of those cases, 40 are asserted cases. And as this body is aware, with asserted cases, there are strict timelines that the Judiciary of Guam Superior Court judges are required to follow. Those timelines include a 45-day hearing if a defendant is incarcerated to a 60-day if the defendant is on pretrial release. Next slide, please. Right now, there is, up in front of the slide demonstrates a pre-COVID case filings, the COVID case filings, and an overall look at what the judiciary is facing based upon the pandemic. As you can see in the first section, there was a total of 2,325 filings during the COVID period, and I would point out to this body that this includes not only our criminal case filings, but our non-criminal case filings, which includes civil disputes, divorce proceedings, probate proceedings, and any of our non-criminal matters. If you look at the last category, you see from January 1st to June 29th, the judiciary is looking at a total of 4,289 cases that need to be addressed. Next slide, please. Our Superior Court judges are working very hard to try and address this backlog under pandemic restrictions. What they have first done is to prioritize those cases, and as this body knows, the criminal jury trial cases stand at the front of the line based upon speedy trial and constitutional mandates. The Superior Court judges are also tasked when addressing this backlog and making sure that they can safely resume their trials, provide for the safety of the jurors, the witnesses, and the parties that come before the judiciary. There are physical limitations and challenges right now that the judiciary faces. Our Superior Court judges, as well as our Supreme Court judges, have been exercising virtual and remote hearings to try and reduce some of this backlog. But as this body knows, with a criminal or any jury trial, right now we're not in a position to have remote hearings in that context. We expect increases in our overall case filings. As of yesterday, our tolling on filings lifted. We also expect an increase in our civil court filings based upon just the nature of what the pandemic will roll out. Next slide, please. This slide serves to show to this body some of the physical limitations that the judiciary is currently facing. What you see in front of you now is the jury assembly room. Pre-COVID times, when we had a jury that was called in for any type of case, we could normally put 80 jurors in that room. Under physical distancing limitations, we can now only have 16. With that type of physical limitations, just the mere process of a jury selection is now hampered and delayed by the physical limitations. The next slide is probably the most illustrative of some of the physical limitations that our Superior Court judges are facing with the resumption of jury trials, in particular criminal jury trials. What this slide demonstrates is, or portrays is, what is our jury box. Once a jury has been selected, all 7 of our Superior Court courtrooms look like this, and they would normally house anywhere between 12 to 15 jurors could sit there comfortably. Now with physical limitation requirements, we can only seat 5 jurors. These are some of the limitations and difficulties that the Superior Court of Guam is facing right now with the pandemic. To further highlight some of those difficulties, I would like now to read into the record a written statement that has been provided to this body from our presiding judge, Alberto Lamoreno, and our clerk of court, Danielle Rossetti. If I may, thank you for the opportunity to submit written testimony in support of the Judiciary of Guam's FY 2021 budget presentation. While the Clerk of Court and I were prepared to present in person, we understand and respect the legislature's physical limitation. As the presiding judge of the Superior Court, I have the administrative responsibility of overseeing the trial court operations, and I work closely with our judges, magistrates, and referees to ensure cases filed with the Clerk of Court and the Clerk's office are resolved in a timely and efficient manner. Over the past few months, our trial courts have been operating under uniquely challenging circumstances because of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you and your fellow senators consider the judiciary's budget submission, it is critical that you all understand how this pandemic has and will continue to impact the services we provide to those that come before the courts and the manner in which cases are resolved. Our administrator of the courts presented case data that reflects active cases filed with the Superior Court before and during the pandemic. The hundreds of criminal cases and thousands of non-criminal cases filed just this year alone have already taken a toll on our trial judges' dockets. Because we must balance the public health and safety measures with administering justice, we have been operating under a different set of circumstances and perhaps what we now refer to as our new normal. The wheels of justice must continue to turn, and our judges are committed to prioritizing their cases and will address the criminal matters. However, with over 604 new criminal cases filed this year and more than 400 scheduled criminal trials, physical distancing requirements and courtroom capacity limitations prevent our judges from holding criminal trials at the rate it would have been scheduled before the pandemic. Our courtrooms cannot accommodate felony trials, and our jury assembly rooms will not hold the number of jurors that are summoned for jury duty. And while the judiciary is working to construct a larger courtroom near our courthouse, one courtroom alone cannot accommodate the number of trials facing our courts. We must also ensure the safety of our jurors when they are summoned to report. Judges will be consumed with holding criminal trials, and non-criminal matters will be delayed. This pandemic also slowed the filing of cases because of the stay-at-home order, the closure of many law firms, and the tolling of filing deadlines. Now that the court is open to the public and employees have fully returned to work, we will see an increase in case filings. The workload will continue to multiply and will have a serious impact on trial court operations. Now more than ever, having a budget that will help support our operation is critical. Any budget reduction will hinder and severely impact how cases are resolved. I assure you, our trial judges and our court staff are working diligently to move cases along, even if it is at a slower speed. We have conducted more virtual hearings through Zoom and teleconference and are looking for innovative ways to improve the efficiency so that everyone has their day in court. These are unprecedented times for our trial courts, and I sincerely hope you understand the challenges we are facing. Signed by our presiding judge, Alberto Lamoreno III, and Danielle Rossetti, our clerk of the court. I will now turn this over to our finance administrator, who will address our second series of budget slides that address our FY 2021 budget submission. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senators. Thank you once again for allowing us and giving us the opportunity to present our budget to you. In understanding the cost it takes for the judiciary to effectively meet its mandates and perform its mission and vision in administering Guam's law, we have to look back at what transpired in the last 4 years. As shown on the screen, In FY 2017, the Judiciary was appropriated with $32,904,686 for its operation. In FY 18, available appropriation decreased by 12.02%. In FY 19, appropriation increased by 1.29% and another increase of 4.67% in FY 20. However, although increases are seen since the realignment, with statutory mandates, total appropriation is still insufficient. In fact, the Judiciary's appropriation for FY 2020 is still 6.73% lower than what it received 3 years ago. Now, looking into FY 17, 87% of the Judiciary's expenditures pertain to personnel services. In this year, increments and meritorious bonuses were still applied, and retirement contribution was at a rate of 27.40%. In FY 17, there were 396 employee count funded under the general fund appropriation. Additionally, 10% of the Judiciary's expenditures comprised of operational costs, of which 43% were relative to contractual services, mainly to support the Judiciary's case management and accounting system. And in FY 18, as we all know, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was implemented, which resulted in the Government of Guam's fiscal year realignment. This implementation resulted in a reduction of 13.3% in the Judiciary's budget. In FY 18, 88% of the Judiciary's expenditures pertain to personnel services. And in this year, meritorious bonuses and pay increments continued to be applied. In response to the realignment, the Judiciary strategically reduced operational cost and froze hiring vacated positions. In FY 18, total personnel count reduced by 8 in comparison to FY 17, from 396 to 388. Total operational costs decreased by 12% compared to the year prior. The Judiciary made cuts on almost all of its expenditure categories except for its modernization and improvement budget. This is due to the obligated and incurred costs to repair the roof of the Judiciary Center building. This was the last major capital outlay that the Judiciary had completed. All other planned repair and improvements have been halted since then. Now, looking into FY 19, although the Judiciary's appropriation increased by 1% compared to the year prior, total amount available for operation was still 10.89% lower than what the Judiciary received in FY 17. In this year, the Judiciary continued to feel the impact of the budget realignment. In FY 19, total personnel cost was 4% lower than FY 18. The Judiciary did not furlough its employees, but instead continued to further cut operational costs and deferred hiring of vacated positions, at some point critical positions, and by statute froze meritorious bonuses and increments to continue to accommodate the decrease in its appropriation. In comparison to fiscal year 17, total personnel services was 4% lower. Total personnel count in FY 19 reduced by 11 from the year prior. Compared to FY 17, the Judiciary experienced a total of 19 count in personnel, from 396 to 377. And from an average of 10%, total operational costs for FY 19 now only comprise of 5% of total expenditures. Operational costs decreased by 40% in FY 19 compared to FY 18. But overall, the Judiciary has managed to decrease costs by 47% in FY19 compared to FY17. These decreases in costs was a temporary response to the budget cuts. With rising costs and deferral in needed services, supplies, and equipment, it will be very difficult for the judiciary to continue to operate effectively and efficiently with this level of expenditures. And now, in this current fiscal year, the judiciary is still recovering from the impact of the fiscal year 18's realignment. Previously frozen pay increment has also been lifted. Although there is an increase in appropriation from the year prior, costs deferred in prior years are now materializing, and the judiciary is still operating with an appropriation that is 6.73% lower than FY17. 89% of the judiciary's FY 2020 budget is allocated to personnel cost, while 8% is towards operational cost, and the remaining is reserved for utilities. Total personal services in FY 2020 are projected to increase by 4% from FY19. This increase is mainly attributed to the prospective application of employee pay increments. Overall, total budgeted personnel cost for FY 2020 is still 1% lower than FY17's personnel cost. Personnel count continues to drop. Compared to FY19, total budgeted personnel count is lower by 4 in FY20. Compared to 17, total budgeted personnel count is lower by 23. This, again, is due to the freeze in hiring of vacated positions. Operational cost is projected to increase by 34% in FY 2020 compared to FY 19. This is due to the accumulated deferral of expenditures in the past. The breakdown that you see for FY 2020 on the screen illustrates the slow recovery of the judiciary from the impact of the FY 18 allotment cut. The judiciary is rebuilding and resuming deferred projects, from acquisition of IT services such as virus protections, security, storage, and backups, to replenishment of facility supplies. The judiciary still continues to maintain a disciplined budget. And even with these increases from FY19, the judiciary's operational expenditure is still projected to cost 29% less than FY 2017's operational expenditure. And now, this brings us to the upcoming fiscal year and to our budget request. As presented to you, historic data shows that the judiciary has maintained and practiced discipline, deferred cost, and needed services when able to address all and any financial scenarios. The judiciary understands the financial challenges of the government of Guam and therefore continue to develop and plan strategically for its future. But to continue to defer and push back the essential tools and services necessary to effectively function can result in a catastrophic impact that the judiciary may not be able to recuperate from. The judiciary is still recovering from the fiscal year realignment, and it is expected to do so in the next fiscal year and beyond. In FY 2021's annual budget request, the judiciary submitted a request of $34,893,999 to be funded with general fund appropriation. This amount represents 5.25% of the general fund revenue available for appropriations from the FY 2021's executive budget. 89% of total requests comprises of personal services, 8% is allotted to our operational cost, and remaining 3% is allocated to utilities. Total personal services for FY21 is budgeted to increase by 13%. This is mainly due to the continued hiring of frozen vacated positions since 2018, as well as projected increase in insurance and retirement contribution rates. FY 2021's budget is requesting to fund 412 personnel. Now, the screen above illustrates the breakdown of these 412 requested personnel. As you can see, filling frozen vacated positions will put the judiciary close to its personnel count in FY17 of 396. This number count was from 4 years ago. With added mandates and operation changes since FY17, personnel count of 396 will continue to bring challenges to the judiciary's operations. Employees are the main driver of our operation, and the judiciary recognizes the importance of maintaining adequate count of personnel in effectively fulfilling its vision and mission. For the past years, the judiciary has re-strategized, re-evaluated, and planned staffing pattern accordingly to maximize personnel talent, increase employee morale, decrease employee turnover, and at the same time, improve operations while upholding to a set of high standards in serving the public. The 14 new positions requested were identified through succession planning, analysis of workload, and to strengthen areas of operations where additional workforce is needed. As an example, the position of assistant to compiler of law was vacated in 2019 when a veteran employee retired. Since then, this position has yet to be filled. As part of the Office of the Compiler of Law's succession plan, and for cost-cutting purposes, the vacated assistant to compiler of law position was removed and instead replaced with a court paralegal position, which has a lower salary range. Another example are the requested administrative service assistant and judicial social worker positions for the Office of the Public Guardian. In over 10 years, the number of wards under the care of this division has increased by 69%, from 53 wards in 2009 to over 90 wards as of April 2020. Despite this increase in count, the Office of the Public Guardian Division has had 4 personnel in the last 4 years. This division has found it very difficult to keep with its mandates and have stretched to the limit of diminishing returns. Although operational cost appears to be extensive, requested $2,624,932 represents only 8% of the judiciary's budget. This amount is in fact 13% lower than what the judiciary expended in FY17. Operational budget supports the daily function of the judiciary and its employees. Many of the judiciary's needed service have been deferred. The judiciary cannot simply continue to risk the possibility of disruption in its operation and put aside needed preventative and security measures. Technology is the core of the judiciary's day-to-day functions. From case management, court calendars, case filings, payments, accounting, to daily communications, the judiciary relies heavily on technological support. Updates are required annually to the court's case management, accounting systems, and other software that holds confidential and imperative information. Additionally, IT services are also necessary for maintenance, virus protections, security protocols, backups, and storage. The employees' computer workstations and uninterruptible power supplies are aged and have also long reached their end of life. For security and safety, law enforcement must be provided with proper tools and supplies. Trials and hearings must be held, laws must be administered, and personnel running these operations must be equipped with necessary tools. Facilities must also be preserved, and the public who visits the judiciary deserves a welcome, safe, and properly maintained space. The judiciary's request of $1.6 million in contractual services will fund our case management, our accounting, HR, and payroll system, other IT services, our law library research system, counseling services, our jury system, and other costs as seen on the slide. The request of $294,000 in supplies and materials will fund our office supplies, our janitorial and maintenance supplies, our law enforcement uniforms, our law enforcement supplies, and other costs as displayed on the slide. The request of $155,000 in equipment will fund the replacement of the employees' workstations that are slowly deteriorating, replacement of uninterruptible power supplies that protects the employees' workstations in the event of power fluctuations, our courtroom equipment, and other costs. The request of $207,000 for modernization, improvement, and maintenance will fund the replacement of our aging servers, the timekeeping system, and an installation of automatic doors at the Northern Court Satellite to comply with ADA requirements and recommendations. Other expenditure requests of $187,000 will fund employee drug testings, pro temp or temporary judge services, our jury subsistence, employee training and certification, interpreters, and other costs as displayed on the slide. Request for utility cost funding of $1.1 million comprises of budget for power, which represents 85% of this budget, water, sewer, and waste, phone, and internet services. The judiciary understands the difficult decision that this co-equal branch of government and body has to make, especially during the midst of a public health emergency and concerns over the economic future of our island. The judiciary too shares this burden. Justice must continue to be served and laws must still be administered regardless of any pandemic or crisis at hand. The judiciary has been diligent and responsible with the limited resources it has been provided with. But as what was presented to you, over the years, the judiciary continuously cut costs, and now it has reached a point where it simply cannot continue to do so without any further substantial repercussions.
I will now address the third and last series of the slides that are before this body. Those slides lay out how the judiciary will address any potential budget cuts to its FY 2021 submission. It's the judiciary's position that our budget presentation is not complete if the impact of any potential cuts is not addressed before this body. Starting first with a 5% cut to the judiciary's FY 2021 submission, as shown in the slide, would be a $1,744,700 cut. If the judiciary faced such a cut, the judiciary would address that cut through the following measures. We would have a freeze in hiring of our 14 new positions and the 8th judge position, and the 10 frozen vacated positions that have accumulated from the past 3 fiscal years would not be filled. Our operational costs that we would look to cut would be the travel and the training, license, and certification budget. If the judiciary were to have a 10% cut to its FY 2021 budget submission, that amount would, as shown on the slide, be $3,489,400. The judiciary, to address such a cut, would look to the following measures. There would be the freeze in the hiring position. We would increase 18 frozen vacated positions would not be filled. The judiciary would also be forced at this point to go to a 38-hour work week across the board for all of its employees. The operational costs would stay the same. If the judiciary were to receive a 15% cut to its FY 2021 budget submission, that amount would approximately be $5,234,100. The judiciary, in order to address such a cut, would look to the following measures. We would have the same freeze in the hiring position, but we would raise the amount to 20 frozen vacated positions would not be filled. The judiciary would also look, with this type of cut, to reduce all of its employees to a 36-hour work week. Its operational cuts would be extended to 3 critically needed items that are in the FY 2021 submission: our server updates, our timekeeping system, and the automatic door for our ADA compliance up at the Northern Court. If a cut of 20% occurred to the judiciary's FY 2021 budget, that amount, as shown on the slide, would be approximately $6,798,800. The judiciary, in order to address such a cut, would look to freeze in hiring the same 14 new positions, the 8th judge. All vacated positions would be frozen. The judiciary at this point would also look to start to terminate its employees. The first employees that would be subject to termination would be our 9 limited term positions. The judiciary, with a 20% budget cut, would also at this point look to reduce all of its employees' work hours to a 34-hour work week. The same operational cost-cutting measures would be taken. If the judiciary had a 25% cut to its FY 2021 submission, that amount would equate to an $8,723,500 cut. In order to address such a cut, the judiciary would be forced to make the following measures. The same freeze in hiring positions would occur. The termination of employees would extend to not only the 10 limited term positions, but the judiciary would also start its termination of its 10 probationary positions. The judiciary would also be forced to reduce all of its employees' work hours to a 32-hour work week. And the judiciary would make the same operational cost-cutting measures from the previous slide. If a 30% potential impact budget cut occurs, that amounts to a $10,468,200 cut to the judiciary's FY 2021 submission. Under such a cut, the judiciary would be forced to do the following. We would freeze in hiring all of our 14 new positions, the 8th judge position, and the frozen vacated position. Our termination of employees would extend to the 10 limited term, the 10 probationary positions, and we would start additional terminations. We would have the 32-hour work week in place for those employees that remained, and our operational cost cutting would stay the same because at this point the judiciary would have no other operational cutting costs they could take that would not completely hamper the services. If a rollover budget is contemplated by this body from 2019 appropriation, that amounts to a 19% reduction in the judiciary's FY 2021 budget request. If such a rollover budget were to take place, it equates to a 20% budget cut of $6 million. Once again, the judiciary, in order to address such a cut, would look to the measures set up on the screen. We would freeze in hiring. We would terminate our 9 limited term positions. We would reduce to our 34-hour work week, and we would make the operational costs cutting measures set forth in the screen above. If this body were to look to a rollover budget from FY 2020 appropriation, that equates to the judiciary to a 15% budget cut, approximately $5,234,100. Once again, the judiciary would be forced to make the following measures in order to address that type of cut. We would have our freeze in hiring, we would reduce to a 36-hour work week, and our operational cost-cutting measures would be as set forth on the screen with travel, training, certifications, and our much-needed server update would be cut, our timekeeping system, and the automatic door for ADA compliance. This completes our series of slides, and at this time in our presentation, I would like to present to this committee the closing statement that was written by Justice Robert Torres. This body has before it the full statement that Justice Torres authored. I would like to, in this presentation, read in and highlight some of the finer points of that closing statement. The COVID-19 pandemic has had and will continue to have a profound impact on judiciary operations. To meet our core constitutional and statutory obligations while promoting public health and safety, the judiciary must quickly make a host of changes during the remainder of this calendar year and next fiscal year. As the court hears more cases, we will be confronted not only with an enormous backlog of cases, but an anticipated surge in new cases and workload. It would be absolutely devastating to cut our funding when our services will be even more in demand than ever before. One of the most urgent priorities facing the judiciary is the resumption of jury trials. Timely trials are a statutory and constitutional imperative. Redesigning and reconfiguring the space to allow for physical distancing is just one aspect of what must happen. Additional staff and security are necessary to oversee and operate the new way we must do jury trials. We ask that you not cut our budget and compromise the ability of our courts to provide essential services that safeguard the constitutional rights of the people. But it is not just the backlog in criminal prosecutions we are facing. Already overburdened with work and short of resources since FY2017, the courts will face a backlog of civil hearings and trials vacated during the closure. This pressure will be compounded by an avalanche of corona litigation. The pandemic has had a significant commercial impact on many island businesses, and they will explore remedies available to them at law. There are an unprecedented number of people out of work and likely unable to pay rent or make mortgage payments, so evictions and foreclosures will rise. Divorce filings, incidents of domestic violence, and child abuse and neglect are expected to increase from quarantine-weary and financially stressed families. We anticipate a large increase in almost every type of family law case, and if many family courts are not working to full capacity, these applications cannot be heard promptly and fairly. COVID-19 may be one of the greatest crises to hit those with alcohol, substance abuse, and mental illness. Across the island, people will experience a profound aftershock of widespread anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. Our therapeutic courts have continually proven their worth to solve problems and create opportunities and better outcomes, with decreases in recidivism, leading to a safer and healthier families and communities. If the mental health and substance use issues exacerbated from the pandemic are not appropriately addressed, it will lead to more recidivism and unnecessary expenses on the back end of the process, and there will be ongoing costs of continual involvement in the justice system. Our constitutional and statutory responsibilities have not lessened, but have increased. Not giving the attention needed to the stream of filings that arise will lead to inefficiency, delays, and unjust outcomes. Given the grim economic picture facing our government, it is natural and prudent to consider immediate cost saving. Treating the judiciary simply as an agency worthy of across-the-board cuts is not only bad public policy, but threatens the very fabric of our society. The judiciary is a stabling force in the face of crisis, and economic recovery cannot happen without a robust judiciary. If businesses and individuals cannot access the vital services provided by the judiciary, Guam will falter and recovery will be longer. If we can sustain our services and contribute to the economic and emotional recovery of our island, our residents and businesses will be better for it. Under-investing in the judiciary also does not save our government money. It just postpones additional economic and social costs by leading to delays and prolonged litigation, more recidivism, and unnecessary costs on the back end. We are especially concerned about the effects any cuts made will have on those individuals of limited means, victims of domestic violence, small businesses, and more. Much more beneficial to protect and promote public safety and economic opportunity by adequately funding the courts rather than paying higher financial and human costs in the future. Now more than ever, this island and the people need fully functioning courts at all levels. Not giving us a reasonable budget will be a terrible burden on the court's ability to function, but the impact on the island, on the people who live and do business here, will be much more profound if its court system is crippled. Now is not the time to defund the courts. Now is the time to take bold action. The judiciary employees are the next wave of first responders. To get us through this crisis and unreasonably reducing our funding will diminish the public's faith in government to deliver the essential services they need and deserve. Signed by Justice Robert Torres. And that completes our budget presentation to this body. We're available for questions. We might not have the answers, but we will try.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for reading out the letters from the justices. I'd like to also recognize Senator Tello Taiga has joined us and Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano. Ma'am, I have a few questions I want to ask. Based on a report provided by the governor regarding the coronavirus relief funds, JOG, Judiciary Guam has approved funding of $84,000. However, it was noted that the Judiciary submitted an additional $182K of expenses after the transmittal of the budget breakdown. There was also a lump sum of $26 million in payroll costs approved for line agencies, OPA, Office of Attorney General, and Judiciary. How much did the Judiciary receive in coronavirus relief funds?
Hi, Senator. So, as of June 29, the judiciary has expended $454,743 relative to.
You can bring that down so I can hear you better. What was that as of June 29?
As of June 29, Senator, we have expended $454,743. 78% of this cost is relative to our frontliners, our law enforcement officers, who has been assisting the Department of Public Health. And Homeland Security, that is a $356,093 of personnel cost. Of the $454,000, we have been reimbursed with $273,369 as of today.
You have 203,000 still,
So we're still pending $181,000 in collection for all of these advanced payments.
all right, okay. Will any of this impact your FY 2021?
I can answer that, Senator. No. Those costs are the recovery of what the judiciary's had to engage in to sanitize its facilities and to, as Ms. Gumalden has already pointed out, the huge bulk of that money goes towards the frontliners that are assigned to the executive branch.
Okay.
But some of the sanitization that we are having to purchase now that we've never had to do in the past are our masks, our PPEs for our marshals, for our probation officers who still continue to do wellness checks. We also daily sanitize our facilities. We did have some major sanitization work done while we were shut down to included the cleaning of our HVAC system and the professional cleaning of all of our carpets in our common areas. So none of that are costs that were part of our FY 2021 submission.
All right, thank you. What is the status of the electronic monitoring program?
Your Honor, excuse me, Senator, I can address that, sorry. I am pleased to report to this body that as of this year, we have a 400% increase in our electronic monitoring. And while that number sounds great, the actual numbers are we have gone from 2 electronic monitoring individuals in 2019 to now 11. And our numbers continue to increase. It's been a slow process of encouraging the defense bar to look to electronic monitoring, but we are starting to see increase in applications. And as this body knows, the cost of a detainee to be at DOC is $130 a day. So looking at 10 to 11 persons on electronic monitoring is a substantial saving to the island on a daily basis. So our electronic monitoring continues to grow. We have extended our contract with the vendor, and we will continue to do that so long as we have the funding available to continue that program. And right now we do.
All right. Looking at the budget digest, I think the 8th judge, that was Justice Gutierrez, right?
Sorry.
Is the 8th judge, is that Mrs. Gutierrez, or is that still a vacant position?
No, Senator, that is a vacant position. The Judge-elect Gutierrez took the place of Judge Bordallo, who left to go to the federal courts. He's the magistrate over there. We still have the vacant 8th judge position.
All right. Do you know what the status is? Is the governor going to appoint somebody soon, or what's the process so we can get that filled?
Senator, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. That as far as what the governor's going to do on that.
All
but
right.
You're correct. The governor will make the appointment.
Okay. Next area, your budget digest indicates a $3.8 million decrease in special and federal funds from $9 million down to $5.2 million. Could you please explain the reason for the decline? And what was the impact of the increase? Okay, start with that one first. Let's start with that one.
So, Senator, if I can reiterate. So that was, your question is regarding the decrease in special fund and federal funds?
Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of our federal funds, Senator, is actually expiring this fiscal year, September.
Okay.
And there are a lot of efforts that the Judiciary is going through to apply for additional federal funding, but as of the moment, I don't have the specifics on those federal fundings.
Okay,
but that's
so
the main reason of the decrease.
there's still hope to get other federal funds in, is what you're saying?
Yes.
All right. What was the impact of the increased fees that were implemented last year?
Unfortunately, your
The COVID killed it?
we haven't completed our full reconciliation of those collections. So I don't have the information at the moment, but we could provide it at a later time.
All right, I appreciate it if you could.
Senator, may I also add just to, under our administrative orders that came out after the state of emergency was declared, we did toll the filing fees. So that data, and I don't know how accurate any of that data would be right now, but we can provide you what we have.
If you could, please, I'd really appreciate it. Last question. Do you have an update of your historical cost of insurance? And please explain how the judiciary was able to save through acquiring their own health insurance when last fiscal year, an additional $500K was requested due to the increased cost of insurance. And associated to that question is, how is the judiciary retirees being provided insurance, if at all?
Senator, our retirees are not part of the judiciary's insurance. It's mainly the active current employees.
Only active. Okay, so can we talk about the insurance part on the first part of my question?
Sure. So based on the initial analysis that we do, we actually do have our RFHP is performed on an annual basis. And prior to that, we do complete certain analysis to determine what the cost saving has been in the past and, hopefully, and projections in the future. So the current analysis that we had prepared relative to our fiscal year 2020, in comparison to the government of Guam.
I'm still waiting for the report I asked 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So we
Okay.
projected about $547,000 of savings from the employee-employer share, and we'll provide it as well with the increases in.
Okay, if you could, because I did request that on the committee of the whole during the legislature, and I still haven't received it. So, thank you, and I'd ask now the Oversight Chair of the Judiciary of Guam, Senator Therese Terlai, to ask any questions she has, and she'll be followed by Senator Regine Bisculi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation and to the justices for their testimony today. It was quite thorough, and the slides that show what the result would be from cuts to different levels is very effective, I think. You were referring to the FY20 amount as 30 million, but when I look at the budget bill for FY20, it kind of shows 32 million. What is that other 2 million?
So, Senator, we had excluded the alternate public defender's appropriation from the, just because that amount doesn't pertain to the judiciaries. And our current submission does not include alternate public defenders.
All right. But that was an entity established by the judiciary. Okay. And then the only thing about your presentation was, when you keep referring to FY 2017 levels, for me, I just feel like it's distracting a little bit, because we are in a very unique situation today compared to 2017, and all agencies across the government have had to reassess everything since 2017 because of the tax cuts in 2018 and now what we're going through. So yeah, it's challenging, but I do appreciate the analysis in comparison to 2020. You are proposing an increase from 2020 then of $4 million. Yeah, and you said 2 million of that is for increments? Or salaries and benefits?
Yes, majority of the increase are coming from personnel services, and mainly due to the 14 new positions that are being requested, as well as now we are the plans to fill those vacated positions.
Oh, so for increase in the number of personnel. All right. Do you know how much of it is for increase in personnel versus the increments?
Are you referring to the 14 new positions, Senator?
No, for the increase of 2 million in salaries and benefits, how much of that is for increments? versus the new staff?
I would have to redigest the budget, Senator, because right now I have them all combined into one. But we could provide that data.
All right, thank you. I want to thank the court for their efforts during this pandemic to remain responsive to the needs of the people. And I know that there are great challenges to try now to catch up with the cases, especially the criminal ones. And I think you did a good job explaining that. But as to the CARES funding that the chair was asking about, you said you used the bulk of it, 78%, for law enforcement pay, but then that you were reimbursed some of this?
We requested for a full reimbursement of all
From
costs.
FEMA?
CARES Act.
Oh, okay, so but there's a certain amount that was allocated to you for CARES from the governor for CARES expenditures. So have you exhausted that?
So, Senator, we bill as we incur the cost. We submit, and we wait to see if they'll be reimbursed. So we just continue to bill under the CARES Act as we incur costs attributable to the pandemic.
Okay. The Judiciary also received from the Burns grant, I think, or another grant. Didn't they also receive some supplies or PPE and different things like that?
Oh, yes, we did. We are very grateful, yes. And we split that between our probation law enforcement and our marshals law enforcement.
And did the Judiciary, I was told they also received another grant. I'm not sure which one this is, but that you were able to use to allow the virtual sessions to convert to technology so that you can do the virtual court hearings and things like that?
Senator, I don't believe that we received any type of grant money for that. It's my understanding that Court Programs is looking to FY 2017, and this may be where perhaps you're going is, they're going to use that money funds to assist DOC. That's where they're going to take and allocate grant money to assist DOC with their technology so that they can be on the same technology page with the Judiciary so that we can conduct virtual hearings from DOC.
Okay, yeah. I thought in addition to that they had also received for the court itself and for the patrons of the court to be able to converse virtually. But okay, I'll double check on that. I don't know the name of the grant either. Okay. The alternate public defender, when I looked this up, it really is a creation of the court, and the public defender is established by law, and I guess I'll talk to the Chief Justice about this, the exclusion of the alternate public defender from funding altogether in this budget. This is the first time that that's ever been proposed, but the costs of this alternate public defender are all dictated by the court. Based on the summary of expenditure sheets for the Adult Reentry Court Program and the DWI Court Program, these were not specified this year as, for particular funding as they were last year. Just checking, are those going to continue? Are they just hidden in here? Adult Reentry Court and DWI Court?
So there may be federal grants that are able to lapse in the fiscal year, and that's what we try to do, Senator, is upon availability of federal funds, of course, we try to utilize and maximize those.
All right, so are you saying for those two courts, those will be fully funded by federal funds?
I will have to check, Senator. I just don't want to give you the wrong amount if that's the case.
All right. Also, it says the request for the Judicial Building Fund decreased from 1.3 million to about 855. That's a reduction in interest payments or something else?
Oh, yeah.
Senator, that's due to not necessarily reduction in interest payment, but more in principal.
Oh,
The
great.
current loan payment schedule that we have is interest only. And that's the main reason for the decrease in cost.
Oh, is this part of your renegotiation? You put off payment on the principal?
Yes.
Oh, I see. What's the net effect of that renegotiation then?
The net effect,
Yes.
I'm,
So for the current year, it's reduced because you're not making payments on the principal amount?
I think this would help maybe clarify that. So the judiciary's former loan, balloon payment came due, and so the judiciary put an RFP out for financing services, so we now have a new loan. So we have started a new loan, and we took the balloon payment from the previous 2008-2000 loan and absorbed it into our new loan. So our new loan, I can't remember the date that the credit agreement that was executed there. So with that, we have now, the judiciary's taken out the new loan for its renovation of its some of its projects, and under that new loan, during the drawdown period for those renovations, we are in an interest-only payment. And once we complete the drawdown period, then we will go back to a principal and interest payments.
Yes, okay, so I'll look at the details on that. The projects that you're describing that will be completed out of this new loan do not include the ADA door? I see that it says you're going to cut the ADA door out of your budget if you don't get additional money for that, but I would think that would be like number one on the list.
It could, Your Honor. Or, Senator, I'm sorry. Yes, it could.
So and you clarified today that the 8th judge position is incorporated, you've incorporated that into your request. You haven't separated out like they did last year, but I see you do separate it if we don't meet your $4 million increase. That's $4 million without covering APD now, you're saying, the alternate public defender. That's significant. Okay. Hold on. Has the judiciary received its full allotments during 2020?
Yes, Senator, they have been full, and thankfully.
Do you anticipate any lapses for 2020?
At this point, Senator, we haven't completed our reconciliation of all of our finances.
Do you anticipate any?
I just would not like to give an answer without a complete reconciliation.
All right, well, that won't be done until September, right, or after September. What about prior year obligations? Do you expect that there are any that are not met that we might end fiscal year 2020 with?
Are we referring, may I ask for specifics of the prior obligation that you're referring to?
Are there any, yeah, that you are not paying right now?
Not that I am aware of at the moment.
Okay. And the chair asked about electronic monitoring, and so you've included that already in the budget for, can I ask for how many cases that might cover, or?
Senator, the electronic monitoring are not included in the budget. We are still working off of what we were appropriated with in the past years.
Oh, because you weren't able to
we're
expend
trying
it right
to
away.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Senator.
Okay, great. You think that might get you through 2020 then?
We're hoping it reaches in...
Sorry, 2021?
2021. We're hoping that it would reach that, and we have, as mentioned by administrative, the court extended the contract.
All right, and then there's a couple items I wanted to follow up regarding the sex offender registry. We had talked with the court during a roundtable about, increasing monitoring of those on the sex offender registry, and they said that they would, but yeah, I understand there's only 2 people allowed in here, so I'll ask that separately. I'll go ask those guys. The last question is just, with the budget for the 8th judge, you've also included the other items that were itemized in last year's budget for that 8th position would include, the additional staff in the like I think a bailiff and a clerk, all of that?
Senator, the budget that we submitted only projected for the 8th judge. We have excluded all of the positions that would assist the 8th judge at this point.
Okay, and those are not covered by the 14 new positions that you're proposing?
Yes, Senator.
All right. So the 4 million, if you're going to do status quo budget, right, 4 million, it looks like that's very similar to, what do you have here? Your 10% cut is 3.489, and your 15 is 5. So between 10 and 15%, those, you're already proposing that if we keep you at status quo, that there's going to be a 38-hour work week. Does that sound like what you're proposing?
That's correct, Your Honor, or Senator.
Okay. There's no other way to accommodate a status quo budget besides a cut in the work week?
Senator, as we presented in our presentation, the judiciary and the significance of the FY 2017 showing, and the historical data is all the cuts that the judiciary has made for the past 3 fiscal years. And we're at the end. We can't make any more cuts to operationally, and as our mandates continue to increase and our employees, our statutory increases on their own, the answer would be no. We would have to go to that just to be able to continue to operate. And I would point out, too, that this FY 2021 submission doesn't even take into effect the cost of what the pandemic is going to do to the judiciary. I mean, when you look at just even a criminal jury trial, what used to be, a set cost for the judiciary it's now going to have an additional cost. We have to go to a different facility now to conduct that. Our security is going to have to double in that facility. So just trying to meet the pandemic requirements has a high cost to the judiciary that's not even reflected in the FY 2021 budget submission.
I understand that, and I feel for you, but yeah, we're also trying to look at all the agencies together, and we're looking at a decreased projected revenue, compared to what we are operating under prior to the pandemic. And so I'm just very concerned that, yes, almost all the other agencies are, we're looking status quo or less, actually. I mean, I think we have to consider that, so I just wanted to flush that out. But I thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. One question. Do you have any employees that are due any retro pay as a result of the Competitive Wage Act? Or any of your employees have any civil service case, personal actions that they may be due some pay?
So, Senator, our employees don't go to the civil service for any disputes that they have within the judiciary. As an independent branch of government, our disputes are handled within the judiciary through our judicial council. So the answer would be, to my knowledge, I don't believe we have any retroactive type litigation payments.
Okay, thank you. Senator Regine Bescoli, and you'll be followed by Senator Mary Torres.
Sudas Masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Madam Administrator and Ms. Gunmalan, for your very thorough presentation. You answered many of the questions that I had, and I do want to thank you for the opening statement by the Chief Justice Carvalito and our presiding judge, Lamarena. It's very helpful for this committee to be aware of the changes over the past few fiscal years, so I appreciate that for sharing that, and also just the realities regarding potential hiring freezes and decreased work weeks should we consider cutting back on the judiciary's budget, as well as the update on the allotments from DOA, that those are current and they have been current and you've been receiving everything, and then also any prior year obligations. I do want to just take a moment and give kudos to the judiciary for allowing the Guam Department of Labor to tap into your court interpreters to help those applying for unemployment benefits with language barriers. And I often hear many other agencies kind of tapping into the courts if they need to have access to certain interpreters when they're off, or, so I really appreciate you kind of having that brain trust of people that we need to use for different issues in our community, language barriers and language gaps. I wanted to ask you about the overall recruitment for these positions. Are you finding that all of the needed languages are covered, including the ones that aren't necessarily prominent on the island? Maybe, I think there was a pretty heavily publicized case where there was an individual who spoke Italian. So I just wanted to ask about other language access issues and how you're handling that.
So Senator, unfortunately, I'm not the subject matter expert on that. That would be the head of our interpreter, Mr. David Welly. But I do recall, as I'm sure you do, that we did solve that issue with the Italian interpreter, and I think it ended up being a chef over at the Hyatt that we pulled from. But thus far, I don't believe the judiciary's run into any difficulty in making sure that we have interpreters available for any of our court hearings.
That's good to know. Thank you, Madam Administrator. Another question that I had was, it was my understanding that there were some judiciary employees, especially during the height of the pandemic and as we started to roll into PCOR 2, that were forced to take maybe annual leave or other types of leave during the pandemic due to challenges regarding childcare. And I think a sizable portion, maybe like a third or a quarter of your workforce had some challenges about coming back to work because of childcare issues. And I know that many of the childcare facilities aren't up and running 100% yet. So I just wanted to ask if you're able to update the committee with regard to these employees and how the judiciary is helping to accommodate them based on challenges that they might have. I don't know if you're being a little bit flexible with regard to working from home or flexible work hours. So I just wanted to know how you are handling that.
Thank you for the question. I am unfamiliar with any employee who was forced to come back to the judiciary. And I would like to point out to the committee that we did have some, we were a little in the gray area with leave requirements from Pre-Cor 1 to Pre-Cor 2. And we took a position that we would reinstate any of the leave that an employee had to take during that period just because of the uncertainty. But as far as child care, Senator, we follow the EFMLA with that, and we have given a presentation to our supervisors and our managers and to our employees. We have advised all of them if they have child care issues that EFMLA, which is the Extended Family Medical Leave Act, is available to them. And currently, right now, we have 3 employees that are exercising that leave right now as we speak. So I am not familiar at all with any employees that were forced to come back to the judiciary, nor would they be.
I think that was my point, that they were not forced to, but they were having to tap into that EFMLA, and maybe that's the only recourse that we have at this point.
So the EFMLA is dictated under the CARES Act legislation, and the judiciary follows that. So they have leave options, paid leave options, that they are allowed to take per law if they have child care issues.
That's helpful, thank you. Madam Administrator, on page 47 of your budget digest, under miscellaneous licensures, CPEs, and others, for the Judges Chambers Division, there's a significant increase in your budget request from $50,000 to $75,000 in fiscal year 2020 and $500,000 in fiscal year 2019. So on page 48, that increase to $50,000 is for training and certification of judicial officers. And so I just wanted to ask, is this training and certification a new program or a new requirement, or is this one of those things that we're trying to make an effort to reduce our travel? And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to update the committee on that.
Thank you, Senator. So it's a mixture of all of it, and entirely reduce and hopefully traveling. And but as you can see from the budget cuts that we had presented, those are one of the first things that would have to go. And But the purpose of it is, yes, you're right.
And would that be represented in the initial 5% decrease that you spoke about?
Yes, yes.
That would be included, those trainings and
That's one of the
certifications?
first, yes, sorry, Senator, yes.
Okay.
That's one of the first one that would have to go.
All right, that's helpful. And again, I really appreciate your presentation. If I have any other questions, I'll be sure to reach out to the chair or to you directly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Torres, and you'll be followed by Senator Sabina Perez, and we're just going to go down the line. Senator Kelly and then Senator Tello. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that very thorough presentation. No mystery, I've been a great advocate for the judiciary, mostly because I appreciate and I understand what you do. In terms of the rehabilitative court systems, restorative justice, and I think most recently we've seen how the courts have really stepped up in terms of public safety support, especially in the COVID time. One of the things that I was thinking about, the one thing I wanted to ask first of all was with the alternate public defender, the budget being carved out, that will be assumed and presented by the Public Defender Service Corporation? Most likely?
I believe that to be correct.
Okay, so it's not like it's fallen off of the radar? Okay.
No.
The ending statement by Justice Torres, who I'm also no mystery, very partial to, pointed out what is to become a new era for the court, the increased caseloads as a result of COVID, and also I presume too the filings of cases now that are the tolling cases. Has there been an uptick in those? People trying to take advantage of the speedy trial rights and things like that? Is that an issue with the courts right now?
As Senator, as was set forth in Justice Torres' closing statement, there is an anticipation that we are going to see a typhoon-type surge in filing of cases and of speedy trial cases just to push these cases forward. So we will see, we expect to see a dramatic increase. And as we've advised this body, those cases take first priority. By law, we have to address the asserted cases first. And it's anticipated they're going to absorb most, if not all, of our trial judges' times.
And that would be a very good reason for us to support the judiciary's budget as presented, because given the idea that there's going to be an increase in cases, an increase for the needs for the court services right now to deal with people with drug addictions, domestic violence type cases, those sorts of things. The idea that we would jeopardize, say, an eighth position, an eighth judge who is anticipated to carry the civil docket, which is backlog because criminal cases are always prioritized. But in addition to jeopardizing that position, we could potentially have reduced hours. So it doesn't make sense that the one co-equal branch of government who really is going to shoulder the brunt of the COVID outfall, which is everything that happens when society breaks down. Jobs are lost, people are stressed, there's more crime, more domestic abuse, people not paying bills, foreclosures, challenges to leases and the like. So with that in mind, I fully appreciate that you've presented in this budget the what-ifs, the different tiers of what those ramifications are if the judiciary were to be further shorted what is the necessary financing levels to run optimally. And with that, I would just like to end by saying that I fully support your budget submission, and I hope that when we weigh what is most important, or as we prioritize in these lean times, we do support those agencies or that third branch of government that is going to absorb disproportionately the outfall of this COVID pandemic. And I think that was critical for you to, and I appreciate that you broke it out so succinctly, because without understanding what exactly the impacts of a cut in different tiers would be, we can't appreciate what the adverse effect it's going to have to the community. And I think that's what we're talking about here. This is what is projected. This is what we anticipate we have to do. This is what we're not going to be able to do if we have a series of cuts. And I just want to end by saying that many of the questions were asked by the budget chair and by the oversight chair that I had. But I just wanted to at least lend my support and for the judiciary. And I think I want to impress on all my colleagues that it's important, as I've always said, to examine the value that this branch brings. And oftentimes we overlook the importance of justice. And without justice, there is no complete picture to the service to the community. I mean, that tier absolutely has to be shored up. Absolutely, in my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Sabina Paris, followed by Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation today. I think it's great to have these scenarios kind of laid out as far as, what happens when, we have to cut a third, the budget. So I do appreciate that. I just have a couple questions. I do, you start out your presentation regarding the caseload, and I'm just wondering, with the 39 personnel increase that you're requesting, how would that absorb, how would that affect the processing of, or the help processing of these cases?
It would affect greatly our ability to do that. Some of those positions are clearly within our C&M division, and more importantly, in our Marshals division.
Okay. So yeah, the other thing too that I wanted to ask was the cost, I guess, the utilities. So to what extent can that be reduced using conservation practices, or to what extent, can you utilize conservation measures to reduce perhaps the cost?
So Senator, we already practice that. Our Facilities Division, by way of example, shuts down our aircon units, much to everyone's dislike on Monday morning. But we do try to practice those measures. By way of example, too, during the pandemic, we shut down chiller operations just to keep our what we were air conditioning reduced. So we do practice that, but other measures suggested by this body, we would more than welcome.
Okay. In regards to the pandemic, have you seen a decrease in collections? Probably this is a self-explanatory question, but have you seen a reduction in collections?
Senator, we are still trying to analyze it. During the pandemic, we did offer more of the electronic filing, and those are still coming in and still being determined and analyzed.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question that I had was, are you pursuing, I know this was touched upon earlier, but are you pursuing any type of stimulus grants at this time?
We actually met with FEMA yesterday, and we're quite disappointed in the outcome, I must say. But we've got CARES Act funding, and then we look to that, and we'll continue to apply as we build up the costs associated with that. But other than that, we've got to come within the four corners of the requirements. By way of example, we asked FEMA if they could assist us with our need for larger court space for our criminal jury trials, and there was some disappointment in the responses there. So we may have to incur that burden ourselves.
Does it have to do with the deadline, or is it something else?
No, I think because the pandemic is so different than anything even FEMA, in all fairness to them, has ever dealt with. It's a category that is strange to them for us to go out and look maybe to rent additional space to hold our criminal jury trials, or to augment some of our space and build bigger courtrooms. I think it's just an object category they're not familiar with, and I think sometimes the impulse without saying more is to say no when you ask for any kind of assistance with that. But the judiciary will always look to any type of assistance we can get, and we pursue it. We continue to try and pursue FEMA to assist us with that.
There's also GITA. I believe they're actively looking for various grants. So I don't know if you were able to outreach to them.
We most certainly will. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks. And then the other thing was, we're considering this perhaps the new normal, and I was in conversation with one of the judges, and they were mentioning how, they can actually do things more online, and I noticed you have a modernization IT section in your budget. Can you explain how this could be utilized to kind of adjust to the pandemic times?
So, Senator, the submission of the budget was mainly done really prior to the pandemic. So as we continue to move forward, these plans will support those functions, such as virtual hearings. Those needs to be supported with our IT maintenances, virus protections and protocols, and storage and backups in the server. And I hope this answers the question that yes, these requested amounts will truly support the efforts that this pandemic has brought to us.
Okay.
Senator, if I may too, though, there's a lot that's not included. One example would be the judiciary, because we have, we're pushing our virtual platforms for physical distancing, and our broadband right now in the judiciary is not equipped for that. So we need to expand our broadband services, which is a cost that's not reflected in FY2021. So as we look with whatever this body decides to, we still have to do that broadband. So we'll cut from somewhere else to make sure our broadband is increased so that we can continue our virtual and remote hearings.
It'd be good to see that estimated cost. If you can perhaps provide that information.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. No further questions.
Thank you, Senator Kelly, followed by Senator Tello.
Sujus Maasi, Mr. Chair, and Sujus Maasi to both of you. Let me go ahead and find my notes. So, as has been mentioned, your presentation, the letters, they spelled out quite a bit of detail of the considerations of the court, which was really important to hear. So, we're very appreciative of that. The more that we hear, the more that we're understanding just exactly the needs and, of course, the consequences. The outlining the types of anticipated increased cases is also important, not only for us to hear, but for the entire community to understand where we're at with these things and to understand how it's impacting our government in a variety of perhaps novel ways. And I also appreciated and think it was important to outline that when we're looking at these situations, it's not just something distinct like the courts and something apart, but it is also tied into the health of the community, the health of our economy, among other things. And we really need to be able to understand how we're all tied together. And if something is, the term was used, underinvested in, it can have some far-reaching implications. And I'm sure to the best of our ability in these hard times, those powerful words are going to stick with us and are going to compel us to prioritize as much as we can. So, and people's questions have likewise been pretty thorough. So they've covered the loan, the special fund. Those were all important to hear about. And I'm going to ask just a couple of questions to provide a little bit more detail. And if it was shared, I apologized if I lost the specific detail. But when you were talking about personnel, if you could just spell out how many are unclassified?
So Senator, from the budget presented to you earlier, I'm sorry, slides presented to you earlier, our budget submission included 276 count of classified personnel.
And you said 276, is that classified or unclassified?
276 classified.
Okay. And with those positions, and again, it might be in one of the slides, but is there a breakdown or understanding about how they're funded through either special funds or other funds?
Senator, the count given are all funded under the general, the fund provided to, the number provided to you are all funded under the general fund appropriation, as stated also in our fiscal year 2021 submission.
Okay, and like I said, it's good to get that clarification. The slide that I was finding as I was trying to get ready for this had the personnel count and it broke it up otherwise, but I'll go back and look for those very specifically so I can get a better understanding of them. And the one thing that I remember, and I had appreciated at the beginning of this term, getting a very good presentation, so I think this is something that the judiciary continues to do well, is they had given a very helpful orientation when we first got in. And there was discussion about traffic citations, and so that's always stuck with me. It was such a stark contrast or change. Whereas like, I believe you have in some of your charts here, that there were some highs in 2015 where there were as many as 11,787 traffic citations. But over time, there's been a decrease, and that seems to be tied in. We know that with our police officers, that those numbers have gone through decrease as well, and there's probably a very strong correlation. So when we got all the way down to FY 2018, and it went all the way from almost 12,000 to just above 4,000, just to help people understand what a difference that was. And with that difference, of course, is the money that goes to the special fund. So again, it's just kind of all related. Have there been increases in FY 2019 and FY 2020 in the number of traffic citations?
Senator, I believe you're referring to our 2019 annual report, if I'm not mistaken. So these traffic citations are, you're right, Senator, these are from the Guam Police Department citation, and the collection from these are goes towards our judicial building fund. And yes, there has been increases in the past. Decreases.
And so at this point, is it going back up to increasing and hopefully helping out your building fund then?
Senator, that would really depend on what the Guam Police Department cites. We have no control over the.
Right, so I'm just looking for numbers.
Yes, but you're right. From 2015, there were reported of 11,787 citation. 2019 is a total citation of 5,167.
So it seems like from 2018 to 2019, there's at least been some healthy growth. It's maybe still underperforming in a sense at being half, but it looks like there's at least some growth, and I think that's important, that as we're trying to increase the police officers that are out there and ensure safety on the roads, it's also hopefully going in the direction that it's helping out your special fund. There was one other question about, it's something we've talked about before, and just to check in on it again. So with the building located adjacent to the Agustin McDonald's, with that payment, is that payment still ongoing? And if so, is it a monthly or annual lease of that building? If you could just update us on where that's at.
I can do that, Senator. That's what we term the Route 4 building. So the Route 4 building, the Judiciary has now started to move forward on that building. We actually have a blueprint from an architect that has put out, and we are preparing to put that out for an RFP, or a bid for construction. And it's the Judiciary, we've kind of redone, rethought, and reprioritized to maximize the use of our facilities and the limited funding that we do have from all of our sources. We are going to make that building into a storage facility. But it also has, and then our intention is to shut down our storage lease that we currently have. That's what our projection is to minimize our lease footholds. We also are going to look to that building if we can get appropriate funding to possibly also house one of our larger courtrooms as we have to address this onslaught of criminal jury trials. So we're going to look at it as much as we can for a multi-purpose. But right now we are moving forward and getting that building renovated and getting it ready for use.
It's good to hear about that forward movement because that was the forward thinking all along, right? Is to secure it when it became available and to have it be something meaningful for the courts. And if you could just refresh my memory, I may be misremembering, but I think perhaps at the old Superior Court building, is there any storage in the lower levels of that building, or am I misremembering?
Are you speaking to the Guam Historic Courthouse or the
Right,
current
the old Superior Court, so.
No. In fact, that building is in desperate need of renovation also. So there
Right.
is we hate to say it, our probation service division and our Office of the Public Guardian that currently are housed in that building are the equivalent of sardines in a can. It's very, very crammed in that building. So.
And I think a few years ago, I know that they were moving towards getting some sort of grant, maybe based on, or maybe it had to just take into consideration the historic nature of the building. Did they, have they in the last few years, did they get a grant to update that building to a degree, or is that still in the works? If you could update me on that.
Sure. So that building, the Guam Historic Courthouse that you're speaking to, originally they were looking to USDA loan to finance some of the renovations, and unfortunately the Judiciary was unsuccessful in securing that loan. But the Historic Society, because the building has great historic value for the island, has, my understanding, and I may have Ms. Gamaldon correct me, they have dedicated, I think, approximately $50,000 to the architectural design to make sure that the Judiciary maintains that building in its historic as best they can. And I believe that's the only outside funding that has surfaced. Well,
thank you for the update. I was too hoping, I didn't remember that it was a USDA loan. I just knew that there was something in the works. And so it's disappointing to hear that that didn't go forward, but I know that they gave it a really good effort. And so hopefully something along those lines can go forward. I know there's the Hagåtña Restoration Authority. I know, I believe you're referring to the Guam Preservation Trust.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And so hopefully there are some means, because it is a very historic building. It's of the buildings here, it's the one that's perhaps been the longest maintained and all sorts of other things continuously utilized and so forth. Yeah, so I definitely hope that there can be continued exploration for some sort of loan or grant assistance locally or federally or otherwise. But Sejus Masi for explaining both of those buildings to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Tello Taitigui, you're recognized.
Sejus Masi. Hi, Christina. Good to see you.
Hi, Tello.
Hi. And Diane, thank you so much for being here and the presentation, the very thorough presentation on what it is, what it happened, and what will happen. That was it was a very it was drama toward the end there. That's a first for me to see something like this is going to happen, but I really appreciate all that you've put together and really to show you the reality of it all. And I hope that, I remember last year during budget hearing, that when there was going to be a cut in your budget, I was the first one to get on the phone and call the courts. Come on down here. Looks like your budget's going to be cut. So I will do the same this year because I truly believe that, the budget that you have in front of you is more than justified. It's needed. It's something that the people of Guam, are demanding of our judicial systems to try these cases, to ensure that justice is served. And being a co-equal branch of government, it's very important we treat that same respect that's given to us here at the legislature as well as administration. So I just have a couple questions, for the sake of time. I'm not too long-winded, but I have last year, the budget that was provided to you in FY2020 from the general fund, if you can correct me, if I'm wrong, but I believe it was $32,067,798. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. And then the street fund, of course, was $72,599. Do you see any changes in the street fund at all, considered the COVID? Is it going to drop?
Good question, Senator. In fact, the amount allotted or appropriated for the judiciary from fiscal year 2019 and the current fiscal year, we have yet received any of those funds from the Department of Administration.
Wow.
We have followed up, yes, and
Okay.
unfortunately, the last communication was that there is no amount in the account, in the funds.
So you guys have had to, whatever this is funding, had to fork it out of your budget from the general fund. So explain. Yes, go ahead.
We do have certain collections that are directed towards the Safe Street funds. However, that amount also is allocated for the Department of Correction. We also had, and this, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe my oversight chair just heard about your oversight chair. I like to think she's mine too, but but I think she heard that, and we're going to follow up with that. Why you haven't received any of that Safe Street funding, and try and make sure it goes to you. So, the other question I had with regards to the hazard pay, the executive order the governor put out for those who in harm's way or feel that there's close to the COVID, anybody being exposed, the 10%, 15%, and 25%. Does this apply to the judicial branch?
So, Senator, the Judicial Council, as the governing authority of the judicial branch, put together its own Judicial Council resolution with a differential pay scale. So we have our own our differential pay that we did put that in, and I believe it was effective in April, and then our Chief Justice, based upon our financial situation, it was determined that we needed to remove that. So it now has been, that Judicial Council resolution was rescinded.
Is there any possibility that the administration can actually cover that bill? Because this is something that wasn't anticipated of the judicial branch to cover. Has the judicial branch actually sought some kind of financing for that differential pay or hazardous pay?
So we can make requests under the CARES Act for reimbursement of any of that type of pay. With all due respect, we've held back some of that differential pay to see if any of the legislation currently before this body is passed concerning double pay or any of the annual leave obligations, just to see, because we need to make sure that we can honor any of those obligations. Okay. So we're holding back as far as doing any application or billing for the differential pay till we see what comes out of the legislation here.
Wow, that's I hope, yeah, the OFB realizes that those individuals not being able to receive their hazardous pay during this COVID, that the onus would be on the judicial branch to pay that out. However, if in the event COVID funding does not go through or the CARES Act doesn't go through, that you're relying on the legislature to at least appropriate the funding to make whole the judicial branch, like the administration who's giving out the same hazardous pay. So I hear you, and let's stay on top of this, because they definitely deserve it. So let's definitely stay on top of this and find out.
Senator, can I clarify though, anyone
Sure.
that had hazardous pay, because under the judiciary's own pay scale, they're entitled to the hazardous pay that we allow them to have under our pay plans. But those of them that are frontliners
Right.
at the executive branch have been paid. Their hazardous pay or the 25% pay
Right.
differential. Yes.
They has on the executive
Yes.
branch side, but not the judicial, right?
Except for our judiciary employees that are at the
Right.
executive branch.
Okay.
They have had that pay they have realized.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information too as well. A couple more questions, just real quick. Or one more question. Where in your budget did you provide for health insurance? What section is that? And
Senator, are we referring to the rates or the cost?
well, I hear that you guys have already started negotiations for health insurance. Okay, and so my question is, you submitted a budget, and if you don't know what that's going to be in FY 2021, or maybe you might already know, or are you just doing a guesstimate on your budget submission with regards to health insurance and how much you're going to pay for that?
So, Senator, what we do is we project what those costs would be. And you're right, we do enter into, the RFHP is prior to has yet been completed and the submission has been done. So we had to project for those insurance costs.
Which you do every year. I know you do that every year, but I think there was a slight increase.
Yes.
If I wasn't mistaken, for 2020, so my question is, do you anticipate an increase of health insurance cost for 2021?
Yes, you're right, Senator. We did project an increase into the health insurance.
And it's incorporated in your budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Senator, if I may, we usually take from advice of actuarials who give
Right.
us kind of the standard industry increase is, and it's usually anywhere from 5 to 10%. So, but they've been wrong a few times, so we try to, rely upon experts, and sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah,
So,
it is difficult to understand. Well, that's it for me. I thank you guys so much, and please give my very best. Yeah, I'm easy. Give my very best to the Chief Justices who provided, everyone who provided testimony here, as well as the employees at the judicial branch for all their hard work during the crisis. Kudos goes out to them, and most especially to their families who supported them while they were out there, being frontliners and making sure that the judicial branch is standing up and still standing strong today. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tello. And thank you all my colleagues for answering the questions. And thank you for the Judiciary for presenting from 2017. And we're going to end this budget hearing. You recognize 2017, and as we went through the Trump tax cut, while everybody was taking a cut, when the recovery was in place to trying to balance it and make everybody equal, unfortunately, it didn't reach your level. It didn't reach the steps of the courts. So we're going to try to figure out a way on how to bring some level, some balance and distribution of funds. And as my colleagues brought up, is that during this time we're going to have some crunching, but we'll be reaching out to the courts, to the Chief Justice, and letting him know what's going on and where we're at, and then we move on from there. All right? And thank you. The committee will conclude this budget hearing with the Judiciary of Guam. We will continue to receive testimony for continue to receive testimony, and I ask that you address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator joelsanagustin@gmail.com. Si Jus Masi for your attendance and participating in today's hearing, and for those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing on Bill 282-35 LS relative to the Judiciary of Guam is now adjourned. It is now 3:04 p.m. Thank you very much. Thank you.